Now, if you watch my video on how to be useful light, you might be expecting a video talking about medium in the same way, but I actually didn't see anyone asking for a medium video, but instead I actually saw people asking for one for heavy, and there was also a couple other comments about medium that led me to kind of realizing that medium needs to be talked about in a different way, because you can basically just select anything on medium and not put too much stress into what you're bringing in your loadout, and you'll somehow still be useful. This is not due to them being too strong. That's not the point I'm trying to make here. Now, what is and isn't OP is going to be a different discussion altogether. That's not what this is going to be about. But medium is inherently a very useful class. It has multiple supportive tools, such as good movement. It has pretty strong damaging weapons. It has the ability to heal. It has the ability to bring back an ally from the dead. So the main discussion I want to have and question to all of you who are watching is, how do we define the medium class and what role do they play? Medium's most commonly defined as the support class. Having access to the heal beam and defibs certainly help them with that identity. This often encourages them to play a very specific way where they play around their team so they can make use of these gadgets. If a medium on your team does not bring heal beam and does not bring defib, what are they considered? Well, to a lot of people on, the Discord and Reddits and even in my comment sections, I would say that they're very often considered a troll. Some people get upset because, well, my medium just didn't bring defib, so they're useless. So without the supportive tools, is medium just a troll? I mean, it is according to some people. This is where medium gets a very hard criticism when it comes to balancing, as the perception of the class gets lumped into a very narrow category. The class has multiple gadgets, specs, and guns that when combined can create different subclasses. I think this is the original intention of all of the classes, to have a variety of options to pick from and to create something that's unique to you and your playstyle, or to fit into a specific subcategory of that class. This has led to a flurry of confusing updates and patches as people struggle to identify the issues with each class, and they end up just begging for nerfs on one or two things that happen to stand out on a specific class, but it's hard to find the real cause if it's not just staring you in the face. Take, for example, back in the earlier seasons, we all know heavy was an extremely dominant class. The loadout that was used by the majority of heavies was the SA-12, 16, Mesh, RPG, C4, and Dome Shield. Now, as time went on, we saw nerfs to stuff like the M60 and the Lewis gun and the Barricade that were relatively popular, but they weren't really the dominating force on the class. These nerfs got coupled with other nerfs, and it did take a while until we saw an RPG nerf that happened this season. And that was the first significant nerf that might have actually made people question whether to bring it or not. Dome Shield took a pretty big nerf of the duration. Mesh has taken a couple nerfs as seasons have gone on, and the SA-12 back in Season 2 actually took a significant nerf. But it hasn't been touched since, despite it still being the best pick on the class even after the nerf. The majority of top players are using this weapon. There are a couple other weapons shining, but this is definitely the dominant pick. The inflation of Heavy's win rate due to the meta picks was slowly addressed, but a lot of other things in the process were hit. Like I mentioned, the Lewis, the M60, and stuff like Barricade. This created a space where we only really had one option for the class. Other loadouts were considered troll in the comp scene, and even then, they were still getting nerfed. A lot of the strengths in Heavy have lied in the gadgets that can be extremely useful in the cash out game mode, and the specializations that they have being useful in a lot of situations. Nerfs to the guns always ended up making the class feel pretty frustrating to use. At least today, we're definitely seeing a little bit of a switch up in the meta for Heavy, and it is still used a lot in the comp scene. Winch is definitely slowly taking over that role, that dominant meta pick for Heavy. Mesh is still used by some people, but I think when it comes to the most dominant one, seems like Winch has been slowly taking over during the season. But a lot of these other things that ended up getting nerfed in the sort of crossfire of them trying to address Heavy, not addressing the things that are the direct issue, ended up being indirectly nerfed, and then it just kind of left in the dirt. Now, the same thing that has been happening to Heavy has also been slowly happening to a lot of the other classes as well. We started Season 4 with a massive influx of medium players. Despite Model 1887 going unchanged for so long, it ended up just taking over the meta. A lot of the competition, like the heavies on Mesh SA-12 with RPG, that could deal with Model a little bit better, ended up getting nerfed. The XP that could help lights keep at a distance ended up getting hit as well. Most options on medium as a whole got nerfed until model became the go-to pick. In reality, the model problem is a symptom of over-nerfing, but we are still kind of ignoring other factors of the class. The heal beam is the most common choice. The defib is basically used by every single medium. Jump pad is another near mandatory choice on the class. So for those people using something like DMAT with no defib or a turret with no jump pad, if you happen to be using model, you are likely using a class that as a whole isn't really overpowered, but you can catch that nerf anyways because one of your items is inflated. Now, I'm not trying to say that the model doesn't need a nerf either. What I'm trying to say is that classes get extremely pigeonholed into one playstyle because of the perception of players. For all those off-meta players out there getting nerfs to your class because other aspects of the class are going untouched, I feel for you. It's annoying. I'm hoping as time goes on, we get to a balancing state where they're taking into consideration all the quote-unquote subclasses that exist in the game. I understand the need for niche playstyles, and even for me, I do not want to see my beloved bow become a meta pick. It would be annoying with everyone on the bow, but as it stands, it's difficult to use it, so you just rarely see it. When a niche pick like the sword becomes too strong, it instantly becomes a massive pain point for the community. Whether it's OP or not is kind of irrelevant when you're just seeing it in every game, and it feels very frustrating to face against. This is definitely an inflated issue in the casual scene, but it's a lot of these indirect changes to classes that end up affecting other ones. It's a very complicated system, and we're kind of in a weird mix of it when it comes to medium. I just hope that the more care that's given into the balancing ends up in a better balanced state. I know that this season they've been trying to analyze a lot of the data a little bit more and get a lot of feedback from players. That was kind of their mentality, is that they're doing big meta shifts. I think the initial meta shift that we saw in the beginning of the season was pretty good, but there was just a lot of stuff like the Model 1887 that just kind of went untouched and it ended up getting inflated. I don't want to negate the efforts that the developers are going through in trying to move the meta forward past what we're currently in. We're out of the double heavy medium meta, but we're now into a triple medium meta, which I don't think a lot of people are too happy with. And a lot of the indirect or misguided nerfs to classes that often lead to removing playstyles rather than encouraging more playstyles and encouraging counterplay can be a pretty big deficit for the community as a whole. I know a bit of a different video, but I feel like the medium has been a really super interesting topic this season, and a simple video on how to be useful on it felt redundant. This feels like a more productive topic to discuss, but I'm curious to hear from all of you. I'll still be making a video about heavy, hopefully in the future. But seeing stuff like the AK nerf felt a little bit weird because I'd say for the most part, we understand that AK wasn't really OP, it wasn't really an issue. But medium as a whole did feel like an issue. So these indirect nerfs, in order to be like, well, medium is OP, so let's, nerf this one thing that wasn't necessarily OP about it, feels a little bit unfortunate for those people who like to use something a little bit off meta when a lot of the meta stuff might go untouched. I'm not going to sit here and say that like this part of the class or this part of the class needs to either be nerfed or buffed. That's not the point. I just think the approach that they've taken to balancing has definitely confused a lot of players, and I'm hoping to put out some food for thought there in order to stir up potentially a more productive conversation rather than just the simple, oh, nerf model, nerf this, nerf that, nerf this. I think there's a lot more nuance to the game that needs to be looked at. Subscribe so you can be a useful teammate. Thank you to all my members. Comment below what your thoughts are on subclasses. Should we create completely new classes like a 300 HP and a 200 HP class? Should we keep nerfing whatever is OP? This could be any thoughts on balancing as a whole. I just want you to share them. I read all my comments, and stuff like this is very important for me, as I care what direction you all want the game to go, especially as I'm trying to educate a lot of people throughout my videos. I think the idea of subclasses has always been a very interesting thing, because within the medium category or the light category, there's a lot of different roles and ways that you can play the game. Even like how I discussed in the light video, I did mention here's 4 kind of basic roles, but there's so many more that you could get into. And I think that's the same with medium and with heavy. And it's really interesting that the game gives us this freedom. So I want to hear what you guys think about this, or do you think we should just pigeonhole everything to just being like, if you are medium, you have to use these tools, and we just get rid of the rest of it? I don't really know. Either way, select medium, be useful, and I will see you in the finals.
Thank you.
Oh shit! Footsteps! 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 Oh no 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 no! No!
Oh shit!
Steal by the powerhouses.
Now that's how you play to win this game.
Go for me? He did. He did.
I'm going in.
It's like high stakes dodgeball.
Oh, this is not